So you want to be able to punch grass like the pros. Let's talk about it.
Get off there!
Oh my goodness! Oh my goodness, sir! Look at that freaking! Got him! Oh. Oh my gosh, bro! So guys, if you've been watching my channel for any good amount of time, you know there's a ton of punching grass videos on there. Hands down, my absolute favorite way to catch a fish. And you know, it can be a great way to catch a bunch of numbers, but almost always are you guaranteed to catch good size, good quality bass. Today's video is going to be more of a masterclass style video. I'm going to give you all the info that you need to be the most successful possible out there. You know, if you're a seasoned veteran punching, or if it's your first time, I'm going to step you through each and every single step, detailed. We're going to talk about all the specifics of my gear, and then we're actually going to hit the water, and I'm going to show you how I break down, you know, grass on the water, you know, what I look for, how I actually flip, how I punch, what I target. Just gonna let you have a detailed look of what goes on inside of my head whenever I'm out there on the water punching grass. First and foremost, let's talk about your rod. It's one of the most important aspects of punching grass, and I like a 7'6" extra heavy Duckett Micro Magic Pro. And it's really important to have a strong rod, but yet a rod with a sensitive tip. And I see a lot of guys throwing like a 7'10" extra heavy, and I think that's too much. The 7'6" extra heavy, or even like a 7'4" extra heavy, you want to have a long rod, but not too long of a rod, because then that's going to take away some of the sensitivity. You know, because sometimes these bites are finicky. You know, you can't really feel them that well. Majority of the time, they just absolutely throttle the bait. So the 7'6" extra heavy has been the most efficient for me. I know a lot of guys that like a heavy, but I don't like a heavy unless I'm flipping some grass that's not really thick. But most of the time here on Guntersville, I'm fishing the thickest grass mats that I can find. So the 7'6" extra heavy's perfect size. And then as far as reel, it's really important to have a heavy duty reel with a high drag weight, because I ruined about 3 or 4 reels when I first started punching grass because I didn't know that you needed a heavy drag weight. And I want to say this is a Duckett Paradigm. I want to say the drag weight on it is 20 or 25 pounds. They don't make this reel anymore, but it's lasted me 3 years. The longest lasting punching reel I've ever had. So I really wish they still made them. But make sure you have a high drag weight, or you're going to rip out the internals of this reel. I've stripped out all the bearings and stuff in several really good reels, and I just was using for what they weren't designed for. But anyways, you want to have a fast gear ratio. This is a 8:3 to 1 gear ratio. That way you can get that bait in quick. You can horse that fish in. You know, it's all about repetition. So you're gonna be flipping hundreds to thousands times a day. So you want to have that fastest gear ratio that you can to really make it more efficient out there on the water. So rod and reel, 65-pound Power Pro Super Slick. I think it's Super Slick V8. I think that's what it's called. 65-pound test. And then as far as that, there's just a couple more things that you need. You need some thicker size pegs, bobber stoppers, whatever you want to call them, to prevent that weight from sliding up the line, getting separated from the hook. And you need a weight, just a bullet weight, anywhere from, you know, I start out at 1 ounce and go all the way up to 2 ounces, but most of the time I'm going to be throwing the 1.5 ounces, and that's what this is, just a little tungsten bullet weight. And then of course a hook. I like a 4/0 trocar flipping hook. And it's really important, you got to make sure that you have an actual flipping hook. And what the difference in a flipping hook and, you know, just a typical EWG is that little keeper right there. And that's going to allow you to tie the snell knot, and we're about to get into that. The snell knot is super important, and I hear a lot of guys talking about how it doesn't matter, and I can vouch for it 100% that it does make a difference. And the reason I know that is because I learned from experience. I was fishing a BFL Super here about 4 years ago on Guntersville, and I was on great fish, but I wasn't getting many bites. So I think I had like 6 bites that day, lost a couple, ended up only weighing 3 fish for like 9.5 or 10 pounds, solid bag. And it definitely would have put me, you know, if I would have had that same those same quality of fish but a limit, it would have definitely put me into day 2 and got me paid and fishing for the big money. But you know, I was tying an improved clinch knot, and I lost those fish. And so immediately I was like, what the heck is going on? Why am I losing so many fish? And so the next time out, I started tying a snell knot and drastically seen an improvement in my hookup ratio. So snell knot is really efficient, and you better be tying it if you're punching, because you don't want to miss out like I did, you know, miss out on some money because you can't keep your fish hooked up. Guys, you're going to take your bobber stopper, run your line through there. This is the first step. Slide the peg or bobber stopper, whatever you want to call it, slide it up the line, get it out of the way. And then take whatever size weight you decide to go with, slide it through, go ahead and send it up the line, get it out of the way. And then you're going to take your hook. Like I said, this is a 4/0 trocar hook, and we're going to tie the snell knot. And pay attention, because this is crucial. Make sure you go through the front. This is very crucial. If you don't go in this way, then your hook's going to be cooking up in the wrong direction. So I send it through. I got my end right here, and I just double it back, making a big loop right here. Pinch it right there at the keeper, and then take whatever line I have right here, and I'm just going to wrap it about 5 to 7 times right there at the eye of the hook. And then when I've wrapped it, I'm going to take the end of my line that I just wrapped, run it back through that loop, and then go ahead and cinch it down and just pull my main line. And you're just going to watch all of that knot suck up right there into the keeper. Make sure you leave a little bit of tag in, because the first time you catch a fish, it might slip a little bit, so you just want to leave a little bit on there just in case. But yeah, so whenever you go to set the hook on a fish, it's going to kick that hook into the fish's mouth, and that's why the snell knot is so important. So then we go, slide your peg back down, and that's what the finished product looks like. So now you're going to choose your plastic. I like the X-Zone adrenaline bugs. Unfortunately, they don't make these anymore, but you're looking for a slim profile bait with not a lot of appendages or crawls. You know, you want a slim physique on your plastic, and that's going to cause the bait to be able to slide through the mat easier, and you know, less hassle, less fighting getting that bait through. So the X-Zone adrenaline bug is great. I want to say like the Reaction Innovations Beaver, D-Bomb's a good choice, but anything that's slim and, you know, not a ton of arms hanging off of it. So as far as my colors on my plastics when I'm punching, I keep it simple. I either do black and blue or this Okeechobee crawl color, and this one is very similar to the black and blue, except it's got like a blue sapphire top and a green pumpkin belly. But the tails really imitate a baby brim. They've got a little chartreuse hue on them, and you know, the black and blue is great. Either or. Lower light conditions, more stained water, black and blue is a lot better. Bright, clear water, the Okeechobee crawl is better. Now there's one more color that I throw if the water's like super muddy on the Coosa River or something. This is a purple with a black back. They call it purple shadow, but like I said, they don't make these anymore, unfortunately. So I've got to find a new bait to throw. But yeah, guys, that's basically it on how to rig up your punch bait and all the gear that you need. So guys, let's hit the water and show you how I break down these mats of grass. All right, guys, we've got our punch rig tied on. We're ready to go, ready to flip some mats. So right here, I'll turn you around, see what we got. We've got a shallower grass mat, kind of growing a little bit closer to the shoreline. Now in the dead of the summer, these shallower grass mats are better in my opinion. As you get into the colder months, I tend to start looking for those deeper mats, and a lot of times, I'll be fishing those deeper mats in the summertime too. But every day is really going to be different. Pretty much what you're doing is you're looking for changes in the grass, like any type of point, wind break, current break, anything where different grasses meet, like where eelgrass might meet milfoil, or where milfoil meets hydrilla, stuff like that, or where all three of them or all four of them. There's coontail too out here on Gunnersville. Anywhere where all those grasses are meeting are going to be your high percentage spots. But you know, it's all about repetition, all about pitches, all about flips. I'm just flipping it in there, making sure that it falls down. And one thing that I do that's really important on filling some of those tougher bites is I keep my thumb on my spool. A lot of times you can feel your bait bounce whenever a fish hits it. And you know, you see how thick all this grass is. A lot of times you don't feel the bite in the rod because sometimes they just barely grab it. But if you don't feel it in the rod, more times than not, you can feel a little bit of bounce in your line. So it's important to always keep your thumb on your line as the bait's falling down. And one thing that's really important is keep as much slack out of your line as possible. And you always want to control the angle of your rod. If your rod's up too high and you get a bite, like you've got to reel the slack in and set the hook, it gives it a lot of time for that fish to get off. Because you got to think, you don't have much time between whenever you initially feel the bite and then when you set the hook, because you've got a huge weight. Think about it, if you're a fish and you bite this and you feel that big weight dangling, that's not going to feel natural. So you're not going to have very long most of the time to set the hook and get the fish hooked. All about keeping your line, you know, at least amount of line out as possible, and keeping a good feel on your rod and the line on your spool with your thumb. But if you can learn how to flip with both hands, it's really makes a world of difference. Because if you're doing this all day, dude, it'll wear you out. Like, I'm right-handed and I'm flipping with my left hand, and then, you know, I'll swap every now and then. I'm more accurate flipping with my right hand because I'm right-handed, but you know, a lot of right-handed people actually get left-handed reels for this technique. But you know, I'm pretty ambidextrous on a lot of things, and this is being one of them. So I just use right-handed reel and swap which hand I'm flipping with. But like I said earlier, this is kind of a intimidating technique, because a lot of guys I hear, they're like, how do I know if I'm getting bit? And boys, most of the time you're gonna know it. Oh yeah, got him. Oh. But if not, that's why I tell you to keep your thumb on your line and the spool, because if you don't feel them just absolutely thump it as soon as the bait slips into the mat, it might be one of those subtle bites. But probably about 75 to 80% of the bites you get punching are just gonna absolutely throttle it. There's gonna be no mistaking it. So you just gotta flip, you know, like I'll go through certain stretches where, you know, it's like an hour in between bites, but then I land on a pot of them and it's just boom, 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 setting the hook. Because you gotta think about it, a lot of times, especially in the summertime, these fish will stack up in these mats and treat them kind of like ledge, you know, schools of fish on a ledge. You know, you could run a ledge forever and not catch a fish, and then you land on a massive school of them. Now, I mean, they don't school up as much in the mats as they do on the ledges, of course, but you know, you'll run into a 5-foot section where you catch 2 or 3 out of them sometimes. And so whenever it's moving fast, but don't move too fast. But whenever you start getting bites, go ahead and slow down. And one of the biggest pieces of advice I could give you is go as light as possible on your weight. It makes such a big difference. So if you can get a more subtle entry into the mat, especially on those days where those fish are pressured, it's really gonna make a difference. Because, you know, if the fish are being spooky and they don't wanna bite much, and you know, you airmail that big weight into the mat and make a big splash, you know, it's just gonna scare the fish off. But so you want easy entry into the mat, controlling the line with your thumb as you're flipping it in there to really put some, you know, stopping power. Because I could probably flip all the way to the bank, but I use my thumb to stop that line as it's being let out, to kind of, you know, be precise on where I want to go. Yeah, most of the time, like I said, those fish are going to hit it as soon as you flip in. So if it doesn't fall through the mat, you can kind of give your rod tip a shake and then let it drop down. And if that don't work, sometimes you've just got to airmail it, send that thing up in the sky if the grass is that thick. But most of the time I'm using a 1 ounce to a 1.5 ounce, and 2 ounce if it's really heavy. But I try to stay away from that because my hookup ratio just gets so bad whenever you get over that 1.5 ounces. But as far as working it, you know, most of the time, as soon as it goes through the mat, or, you know, as soon as you let it sink all the way down to the bottom and pick up your slack, the fish is going to be on there. But I've seen it a lot of times, especially in the fall time, where you drop it down, you know, let it fall all the way to the bottom of the mat, and then you work it up slowly like you're jigging it, and you bring it up to the bottom of that mat and just kind of jig it. You know, you're bouncing that bait off the bottom of the mat and letting it fall back down, kind of like you're jigging it. I've seen it a lot of times. That's the only way for me to get bites. And you know, in that BFL Super that I was talking about in the intro, that's how it was. All of, you know, I didn't get many bites, but all of them came with me flipping it in there and then just slowly jigging it up, bouncing up off the bottom, or off the bottom of that mat under the water. So guys, I mean, it's really not that complicated, and I know why it's intimidating, because it was intimidating to me whenever I first started punching. I guess that was 5 years ago. I was out on Pickwick, and you know, it's funny, I was out on Pickwick and I was so frustrated with how many boats were out on all these schools of fish offshore that I've been fishing for years, that, you know, were kind of secret, but then they were community holes, and I was just getting fed up, and I was like, dude, I'm tired of fighting boats. I'm gonna learn how to fish shallow, learn how to fish grass in the summertime, because it's something that I never really did in the summertime. You know, I would do it in the spring and fall, but as far as the summertime, I would be offshore fishing those big schools of fish, you know, on like your humps and points and river bars and stuff like that. So anyways, I took time all summer. I sucked the first couple times, only caught like 2 or 3 fish, but man, it was so rewarding learning this technique, because there's not a ton of people that do it. It gets overlooked, like I said earlier, and you know, it really is an art of bass fishing. So guys, don't be afraid to fail. If your first time out trying to use this technique is not good, don't give up. Keep doing it. Repetitions, it's only going to make you better. I can't tell you how many times in like August, September, and October I've had tough days, and if I didn't know how to punch grass, I would have zeroed. And you know, several tournaments where I did good, won a lot of money, and they all came on the punch rig. So guys, it's a very important style of fishing that you need to learn if you live near a grass lake like Guntersville, Florida, of course. You know, I feel like I'm a Florida boy at heart. I probably should have been born in Florida, but but I love this bite on Guntersville. And you know, if you got any questions, please let me know down in the comments below. And one thing that I do that's pretty neat in my opinion is I'm a guide on Fish Tips. And Fish Tips is it's a website where you can go and get information, kind of like a guide trip, but you don't pay near as much. You know, you can get info on a detailed bite, waypoints, all the information that you need, and you can have the info to the guide. You know, their phone number. You can message them on there, you know, if you got any questions about anything. But guys, so I'm a digital guide, and I've been catching a bunch of fish, punching, frogging, all kinds of stuff, and I've actually got some packages on Fish Tips. So if that's something that interests you, you know, you want to have a jump start on everybody else that hasn't ever punched grass before, you know, take the link down in the description below. It'll take you straight to Fish Tips, or you can email me or whatever. But I mean, that's just if you're interested in that. But guys, I hope you enjoyed today's video. I hope you learned something. I hope you can feel confident punching grass the next time you go out on a grass lake near you, and hopefully catch fish of a lifetime doing it, guys. So guys, I want to thank you so much for watching. Make sure to like, subscribe. We're gonna go try to catch some fish, boys. We'll see y'all in the next one. Oh my gosh, got him.